I'm joined by the leader of the Green Party, Natalie Bennett. The Conservatives have raised tuition fees for undergraduate students to $9,000 a year. Labour say they want to decrease it to $6,000 a year. But you say they all subscribe to the same model. Why is yours different?
Well, the Green Party believes in zero university tuition fees. We think that education is a public good that should be paid for from general progressive taxation, in fact far more progressive taxation than we have now. And if you look at the current model, it really isn't working. Young people are leaving university with on average £44,000 worth of debt. 73% of them will never pay that off. So they face going through 30 years of their life, for many people from sort of their mid-20s to their mid-50s. Any year they earn any sort of money at all, they'll be paying 9% of their income towards a debt that they'll never pay off. And that's going to be a huge impact on individuals' lives and a huge impact on society. And if you look at the other side of this, current estimates are that 48p in the pound will never be paid back. So the whole model simply doesn't work.
People who do go to university are expected to earn higher than people who don't go to a university and have higher education. Do you think they should contribute to the costs of this education that benefits them?
Well, I think it depends, how people benefit and how they give back to society. If someone does, say, a social work degree and goes off and runs a community garden, they might never earn very much money. They should hopefully be earning more than the current minimum of $21,000 when you start paying back. But they're not going to earn a lot of money. Whereas if you either have been to university or not been to university, perhaps go into the city, make very large sums of money, then you would pay that back through the progressive taxation system. So it's a question of people paying what they can afford to pay, paying back if society is giving them a really good wage. And that's where the judgment should be, is if you're taking a lot out of society, put a reasonable amount back.
Why should people who don't access higher education subsidise those that do?
Well, what we want to do also, of course, is very much boost apprenticeships, boost further education. We want to boost right across the education system, not just in terms of universities. And we want to take away any idea of loans also being there for further education, which there's been a real push towards. So we want to boost education right across the board, not just at universities. And looking at people doing jobs that perhaps may not have a lot of education, we also want to make the minimum wage a living wage. So we want every job to pay enough for people to live on without having to have the subsidies for corporate profits that are things like housing benefit and family tax credit. We've seen the value of the minimum wage really slide away, and it's been topped up so people could live with those benefits. And under this government, those benefits are being taken away and people are being left with food banks.
One thing the Green Party would like to introduce is a citizen's income. Can you tell me about that?
This is what's known as the citizen's income or universal basic income. And what we're saying is this is quite a very big change to the welfare system. So we're not saying we can do this in the term of the next parliament, but we're committed to doing this and we've put out costings about this. And what this basically is an idea is if you're accepted as a member of this society, you get a basic payment. We're starting out at around £80 a week for each adult. And that means that your basic needs are met. You don't have any means testing, everybody gets it, so the administration costs are very low. What that also means is that you entirely limit benefit traps, because if someone, say, is a carer, a family carer, is getting that payment, and then if they get a chance for a week's work, they can go and do that without hitting all their other benefits, without then seeing themselves left in penury. They just get a bit extra for working a bit extra. It also means that if you, say, want to start a small business, you can do it with that security of income behind you. Or say you want to be an artist and you want to get yourself established as an artist. You mightn't have that much income, but you can live on that while you're trying to get yourself established. So it's a real chance to at the moment, so many people with 0 hours contracts and with benefit sanctions are just finding themselves with absolutely nothing. And if we're a civilised society, a humane society, the 6th richest country in the world, we shouldn't be allowing that to happen.
If you already have a citizen's income and you already have a wage there, essentially, why would anyone have the motivation to go out and work?
Well, I think this is sort of where we get into some very Thatcherite ideas, is that, people will do 6 hours work if they get this amount of money and they'll do 8 hours work if they get more money. And I was actually talking into someone in the street about this on the weekend, and I said to him, that's not what motivates people. People motivate because they care about their job, they care about their workmates, they care about achieving something, making a contribution, and there's all sorts of reasons why people work. They, enjoy chatting around the water cooler. And what he said to me was really interesting. He said, yes, I'm working this whole weekend. Because my boss has been nice to me, I'm working for free for the whole weekend because I feel like he's really valued me and I'm going to give something back. And that's a really good example of how we've tended to assume that motivation, money is the be all and end all, but people are motivated by many different things, and all of us pretty well want to contribute to society. And as I've said in other contexts, daytime telly is pretty bad, really. I don't think many people really want to sit around watching daytime telly all day.
One thing the Thatcher government did do was privatise the railways. The Green Party would like to nationalise them. Why?
Well, at the moment, the privatisation of the railways, the fragmentation, there was a very good report a couple of years back showed that it's costing us about £1 billion a year. The cost both of privatisation and fragmentation, you've got a rail line over there. We're sitting beside St Pancras Station. You might be able to hear the announcements in the background. Over there, you've got a rail line used by a number of different companies. You've got to coordinate work with that. When something goes wrong, someone has to be doing a lot of work to negotiate between them. That and the fact that you've got contractors who then take a profit and they have subcontractors and subcontractors. All of this is taking money out of the system, more than £1 billion. And what we want is a system that's run for the benefit of passengers, not shareholders. And there's many examples around the country of trains that aren't part of an integrated transport system, trains that leave 2 minutes before the key bus arriving, coming into the train station arrives. What we need is an integrated transport system run so that it really meets people's needs, meets travellers' needs.
The main justification for privatising the railways was to increase competition in the hope that it would make it more efficient and cheaper. Why would nationalising it solve those problems?
Well, this is an example of so much of privatisation that the competition is an utter myth. If you follow my Twitter feed, you might know that I'm no fan of Virgin Trains, particularly the West Coast Main Line. But when I go to Manchester or Liverpool, I have no real choice about which train I use. There is not competition between trains, except in a very few isolated cases. And what you do get is immense complication. I've been to Winchester looking at 4 different, the ticket machine gives you 4 different options at 4 different prices to get to London, and you're trying to work out which one is the train in 5 minutes. And it's immensely complicated, expensive, inconvenient for people. And of course, we have the most expensive trains in Western Europe for a very poor quality of service. Anyone who's caught trains in Western Europe, particularly France and Germany, which are basically state-owned companies, they run very good trains very well, very reliably and very affordably compared to our standards.
What makes you think they'd be better off nationalised?
Well, what we can do is actually run them for the benefit of shareholders. At the moment, we've got this system whereby the companies, it's their statutory duty to maximise their profits. That's what they're running them for. That's what we want to do instead, is to maximise the convenience, reliability, affordability for passengers. And if that's what the aim is, then that really changes how you run things. And of course, this is even more evident in the NHS. We're opposed to privatisation of medical services in the NHS. And the Labour Party has said they're comfortable with 5% profit for private companies in the NHS. We want 0% profit. And behind that is a philosophical point that we don't think 5% of NHS money should be going to private profits. But also we think that if you're making choices, and I think there's been some contracts lent for end-of-life care, and if you're making choices, you think about something as deeply emotional, as deeply moving as end-of-life care, and you're making choices based on how much profit you're going to make in terms of the service you provide, rather than caring. That's not just the wrong principle to run this by.
All these changes will cost a phenomenal amount of money. Where's it going to come from?
Well, first of all, talking about phenomenal amounts of money, I think it's useful to put this in context. By the end of the Parliament, we're proposing that we spend 45% of GDP on public good, public spending. That's the same as Germany spends. It's not an extreme figure by any means. Whereas by contrast, if you look at the Tories, they're planning to spend 36% of GDP. And that's less than America spends, the place that's renowned for having poor public services, poor infrastructure. So what we're doing really is restoring our public sector, restoring our public services, restoring our communities by spending this money. But in short, where it comes from, we need to make multinational companies and rich individuals pay their way, as they're not at the moment. If you take the obvious example of Amazon, now the van that just went past us might conceivably have been carrying parcels from Amazon, running down a road that we're all collectively with our tax paying to maintain, and Amazon isn't. So we've got those big multinationals that are sucking huge profits out of our society, but not paying their way, and that really cannot continue.